Hey y'all, so I wanted to make a quick video just explaining how really, you know, kind of long lasting, but the big impact of 2018, things that led up to 2018, and the impact that it's had. And because in 2018, it was the midterms, it was the former president midterms, and he did not, let's say, Donald Trump's approval rating and disapproval rating had a net disapproval throughout his entire presidency, I believe. So the midterms were just going, and he did not win the popular vote, as in his election was very close. So it was basically set up from the beginning to where he would have a big blowout in the midterms, but it was also some other factors that made 2018 seem more than what it actually was. Because, okay, let's start from the beginning. Notable 2018 Senate elections. Arizona flipped, which that was a sign of Arizona not being as right wing as it used to be, and then them voting in Mark Kelly in 2020. By the way, this is Kirsten Sinema's election. But Kirsten Sinema, Democrat, being elected in 2018, Mark Kelly being elected in 2020, and them voting for Joe Biden. So it's the shift to the left in Arizona. Colorado, see, this is one of the ones where by 2018 it was very evident that Colorado was already a left-wing state. It's just that its leadership needed to, and its senator that was last elected in 2012, like it just, and Cory Gardner was already, I think, a more centrist Republican. So it was already very evident by 2018 that he would lose, and he did by, I think, like 9+ points. But yeah, that's one of the signs that 2018 was it was kind of already manufactured to be a big for the Republicans and successes for the Dems, because Colorado was already a left-wing state, and so of course it's gonna flip. But that's the only, on the Senate thing, that's really the only obvious case for the Dems. For the Republicans, Florida had been shifting. Now Florida's been shifting to the right, so seeing it flip to the GOP wasn't really that. The big deal about it is that it was an incumbent who was running for re-election, and I thought he was liked. I'd have to go look, but I thought he was approved of. So that also, Arizona showed signs of going to the left. Florida showed signs of going to the right when the GOP unseated an incumbent Democrat. And this is also with like a D plus, I don't know, 3 or more, or 4 or more environment. Like it was very Democratic in 2018. One of the surprises of the night was that the Dems held Montana and West Virginia, which is just so strange to me, because Montana and West Virginia, I thought, and I used to think, and then I looked into it and know, while on the presidential level, West Virginia voted, I think, the most or the second most margin at like 30 points for the Republican candidate in 2020, for Trump in 2020. They also in 2018, for literally, I think he won by 1 point or less, got Joe Manchin in there. And Joe Manchin is one of the most conservative Democrats. He has helped to, he is not a proponent of gun rights. Oh no, he is a proponent of gun rights, and it's not for gun control, because that's also a big thing in his state. I imagine he wouldn't be for climate change action and be for the coal the coal sector, because like the coal, I don't know what it's called, but that, coal mining, and for coal miners, because that's also big in West Virginia. But point is, West Virginia, that was a big shock. That was a shock when I first realized that. When I first saw that Joe Manchin kept his thought. But also, Joe Manchin basically is West Virginia. Like, he basically is West Virginia. Like, it just is what it is. Also, I think it was their current governor used to be a Democrat and then switched halfway through his term to become a Republican. The senator before their junior senator was a Democrat, so they had Joe Manchin and another Democrat just 5 or less years ago. I think it was 5 or less years ago. I'd have to look it up. 5 or 6 years ago. So that's why I'm like, West Virginia is only now on the federal level becoming, and gubernatorially just now becoming Republican. But anyways, no, I think it was 2016 that the Republican senator of West Virginia won her election. But anyways, oh, but also Montana. Montana is actually not as, it's right wing on the federal level, and its state legislature is also right wing, but they've elected Democratic governors and Democratic senators apparently. So that was a shock for Montana. But Montana, I think, used to be more. It used to not be as right wing as it is now. But also that was in a different political climate. So, but Missouri, that was one of the obvious ones. Missouri, just like Colorado, but for the Republicans, Missouri was going to flip no matter what. Missouri is not a bellwether state. It is a Republican safe state, period. Again, it was a Democratic incumbent that lost. And when incumbents lose, and it's a Democratic incumbent in a wildly Democrat year, that's when you start to realize that, a state is actually turning to the right. In this case, turning to the right. And it would be the same, but turning to the left in Republican wave years. But also in 2018, House elections gave them an additional 41 seats. They went from like 190 something to was it 235? 235, 236. I don't know. I think it was the mid to like higher 2000. No, not 2000s. 230s. But point is, and it gave them in the majority, which they hadn't had for like 8 years. So, and some of the big notable ones was another thing with Arizona. Arizona's second district the Dems won it by over 9 points. And Arizona used to be a big, Republican state, so it actually used to not, Arizona was weird. It used to also, it was kind of like the South, where it used to vote for Democrats, and then it went for Republicans, and now it's going back to the Democrats. Same thing with Georgia, but Florida, 26th and 27th. But I think 26th and 27th district is near Miami. So 2018 was, so it's kind of like obvious that Miami would flip their districts back. But then I think 27 flipped back in 2020 for a Republican woman. But anyways, Georgia 6, that's also kind of a sign that in the South, like this is the South that we're talking about. And it flipped. Iowa also, 2018 also had Iowa flipping, which is, weird because Iowa is trending to the right, and so that would have been something. Also, Kansas is their district was won by just under 10 points, which means the state, like this is the state of Kansas we're talking about. This is like the Midwest. This is rural conservative voters, and either the incumbent must have done something wild, or I think Kansas 3 may be like in Kansas City, maybe majority Kansas City. So I think they just had a bunch of momentum, and it being 2018, they had a bunch of momentum on their side, and probably the Republicans votes were depreciated. South Carolina, another Republican state, had a district flip. Texas, 7th and 32nd. But the 32nd is in the south, and I think the 7th is also in the south, but southeastern part of the state, near one of the cities. Utah 4, that also flipped, but Utah 4 is one of the most competitive seats in Utah. It's the only competitive seat really in Utah. But yeah, those are just some notable to show that in 2018 they didn't just pick off, seats in Pennsylvania or Michigan or whatever. They picked off seats also in some Republican states, Utah, Texas, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Kansas. Like, all of those are deep. And well, other than Texas, all of those are deep red states. But anyways, Dems also flipped the Kansas governorship, which in 2016 Kansas voted over 20 points for Trump. So that also shows something is happening in Kansas. But I also think that it was just that the Republican was not liked, and the third party votes were run up. Like, the margins for the third party votes were really high that year. So that got her elected. That's why I think she got elected. But also the lasting effects. So in 2010 and in 2014, there were big Republican waves against Obama in governorships, in state legislatures. Like, New York State Senate was Republican after 2010 and 2014, and I think 2012. But 2010, 2014, they were Republican. The New York State Senate, one of the most liberal states in the country. Anyways, but 2018 reversed that. 2018 was, as you're about to see, all of these states are Democrat states. Oh, so my point being that 2018 was kind of already set up to be a Democrat wave, at least when it comes to not when it comes to the Senate. And yeah, when it comes to the House, they were already going to win the majority because of how midterms work. But in terms of like governorships, but especially state, it was definitely in state legislatures where the Dems were going to flip, like, state legislatures, because 2018, like I said earlier, was a complete reversal on the 2010 and 2014 midterms against Obama. So that's why you see none of these states are Republican states. Colorado is not a Republican state. Connecticut is in New England. Maine is in New England. Minnesota is Democrat. Probably not really progressive, but is Democrat. Actually, Minnesota was progressive, but that's a whole other story for a whole other day. But also, like I said in one of my previous videos, by now it's only in Minneapolis. It just is what it is. But anyways, so the Minnesota is not a Republican state. New Hampshire is not. New York is not. So New York and Connecticut are definitely not. So I don't even know how they got in the Republican hands in the first place. But anyways, point is, like, if it was in a Republican year, I think the only one that wouldn't have changed is New Hampshire. And maybe Minnesota, but probably just New Hampshire. Because Colorado was turning to the left. Connecticut is literally in New England. Maine is also in New England and is also left-wing. Minnesota is Minnesota, but has been voting Democrat since 1976. Voting Democrat governors, like, it's a whole thing. New Hampshire is a weird bag. It votes on the federal level for Democrats, on the state level for Republicans. So 2018 being a Democrat wave year in New Hampshire already is not. It's not a surprise. And then the New York State Senate is obvious. So the point of the video being 2018 I think if they would not have swept any state legislatures. Like, they would not have gotten any Republicans that were outside of these already blue states and trending left/left-wing states. Um, but that's on the state legislature side. On the governorship, it was big that they got the Kansas governorship. That still weirds me out. On the House, um, it showed Arizona and Georgia going to the left. Virginia was also another one that was going to the left. A lot of their House stuff went to the Democrats in 2018. Kansas third, Oklahoma, like they took some stuff. They took some Republican stuff in 2018, and on the Senate level, it was big. It was big when Joe Manchin got it, and it was big when the Montana person got it. But, anyways, yeah, I think that's my video. Let's do another one. But I think one of my future videos that I want to make will be on. What will it be on? But the idea left my brain. But yeah, I will have another video up about something that I forgot right now. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one.